The governor extends her stay-at-home order until May 28th. But Republican leaders are tired of her bypass, and they're taking her to court. And there are two kinds of health, physical and fiscal. How do we balance the two? Today is Sunday, May 10th, 2020. It's Mother's Day, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. A very happy Mother's Day, though certainly the oddest Mother's Day in memory. A lot of people were looking forward to this coming Thursday when we hoped the stay-at-home order would be done, and while the virus crisis wouldn't be over, we would feel a palpable sense of progress. But the playing field got a little longer on Thursday when the governor announced she is tacking on another 14 days, which stretches the order out past Memorial Day. None of this will play well with those who've been protesting in Lansing and online, and the governor's approach continues to win her no fans among Republican leaders at the state capitol. They have sued the governor for unilaterally extending her emergency powers. Is this a fight over the governor's actions or over the authority through which she's making them? In a minute, we're going to talk with the Speaker of the House, Lee Chatfield, about that. And then we're going to talk over this line we're trying to walk between a health catastrophe and an economic one. Patience is wearing thin. How do we hold it all together? It's today on Flashpoint. Well, Michigan is a bit of a house divided among itself, at least in Lansing right now, as the state legislature is suing its own governor. Let's talk about that with the Speaker of the Michigan House, Lee Chatfield. Speaker, thanks you so much for your time. It's great to have you here this morning. I guess as we look forward, we now know that the oral arguments are set for this coming Friday. It's been set for May 15th. I guess my first question is, do you have more of a problem with the fact that the governor is doing this unilaterally, the way she's doing it, or do you have a problem with what she's doing?
Well, good morning, Devin. It is a pleasure to be on the show. I appreciate you having me. You know, I think in a pandemic, what we've done in times past as a country, as a state, is we've come together and we've worked together. I think our country's strength is in our unity. And we offered that partnership to the governor last week, and she rejected it. We offered cooperation, but instead she chose the courts. And I think it was a disappointing time for our state because it was a missed opportunity. And we would like to return to the normal democratic process where we are working together, we're all on the same page, we're rolling up our sleeves for the good of the people of our state. Now, I believe the governor has the best of intentions in the decisions that she's making. I understand she's in a difficult position, and no manual was given to her or to the president with how to deal with this pandemic.
Yeah.
But when we work together, we're stronger, and we think that the laws still need to be followed, and our Constitution still needs to be followed, even while we are in a pandemic.
Well, a lot of legal experts right now seem to be saying that, the legislature is a little bit out of luck because the structure of our form of government in this state just leaves the governor with a great deal of strength that can kind of sidestep the legislature. I think it's at best 50-50. The legal experts that I'm reading, I know your own attorneys are advising you perhaps otherwise, but is it just the fact that you might need structural changes? For instance, getting rid of one of these, either the 1976 law, the 1945 law, rather than being able to succeed on the way the law stands right now?
Well, I think the law is very clear in Michigan, Devin, that in order for a state of emergency to be extended, it requires legislative approval. As a matter of fact, that's why the governor asked for it, because it's what the law requires. Now, we extended it the first time. We understood the governor was in the best position to make many of these decisions. We extended it, and when we got to that final extension, and she asked for an extension from the legislature, we extended our hand and said, we will extend it. We'll keep the state of emergency in place if you can at least assure us that we will, through the democratic process, at least decide what the stay-at-home order looks like. You see in our state, Devin, across the entire state in every single corner, our regions have been impacted in different ways.
Yeah.
What we believe is that our strategy needs to recognize that a one-size-fits-all approach is not the right call. And could you imagine a scenario, Devin, where we told every hospital system, every healthcare system, we're going to give you the same PPE, the same resources, the same funding to fight COVID-19. Well, that would be absurd because different regions need more of it, and we should provide that. But if we're going to regionalize our relief efforts, we should also regionalize our policies, and we wanted to work together with the governor. I think the law is clear, and for the first time in our state's history, the legislature chose not to extend it, and the governor said, I'm going it alone. I no longer need your help.
Well,
and whether it's the president, Devin, or the governor, We're all in this together. The president needs Congress, just like the governor needs the legislature.
Well, you now have to wait almost a week here, and by the time that this gets heard, the oral arguments, you'll be almost at 2 weeks since you filed, or a week and a half at least. Why didn't you ask for an injunction? Why didn't you ask for immediate relief from the courts?
Well, we thought this was the best way to move forward, Devin, and I will let our attorneys make some of those arguments in court. Obviously, it's pending litigation right now, so I won't necessarily give all the details. But we thought this was the necessary step, and nobody wanted to be here. Nobody wanted to fight this in the courts. No one wants to have this go through a legal battle. But we do have 3 co-equal branches of government here in our state. And it's important in times of pandemics that that structure is upheld, that it is maintained. And now all 3 are going to be involved. The governor's in a tough spot. We want to partner with her. We want to help her. I think she's got the best of intentions, but we're strongest when we're working together and following our Constitution, and I don't think we are right now.
Let me ask you this. The governor says that she is just listening to scientists and epidemiologists. Who are you listening to?
Well, we've been talking to a lot of people, Devin, and I'll tell you this, we've been talking to nearly 10 million people in our state, and many of the same people that she's talking to, whether it's the people who are running her potential business reopening plan in Detroit or her chief medical officer. I'm in communication with them. I'm in communication with the governor as well. But we need the people to be at the table, and the legislature is the people's voice. But let me push back a little bit on that, Devin, as well. When someone says they're simply following data and science, you see, the entire country right now is in a national emergency. We're seeing states handle this in different ways. One of my main requests to the governor over the last month is to adopt the most updated federal standards, as many states have, because they're science-based. Yet Michigan has refused to do many of those very important steps, and she's refused to implement some of the more reasonable changes that we have been asking. So I actually think Michigan is an outlier in that we're not following data. If public safety is our #1 goal, Devin, the next logical question needs to be, what can we do safely? But you see, we say safety is our #1 goal, so let's determine what jobs are essential in our state. I think that's the wrong strategy, because any job that puts food on our table is essential. And we need to approach it from that perspective. And if we do now, we'll save ourselves a lot of trouble down the road as a state.
The protests that we've watched break out around Lansing, nobody, I think, questions anybody's right to dissent in America. But I'm curious as to how you feel about the way that these have been carried out, the way that they've spread out all over the world as people watch people packing guns, marching, and in some cases trying to get into the state Capitol building.
Well, there's nothing more American, obviously, Devin, than people coming and protesting and explaining their frustrations. There's people in our state right now who are hurting. There are families who have had their livelihoods taken away. Some are being told that they can't work a job and take care of their loved ones, even when it can be done safely. So many people are coming to the Capitol to protest. Now, there have been some bad actors, in my opinion, at these protests. There should never be intimidation. Some of the signs that I've seen on the lawn they're out of order, they are wrong. And quite frankly, they're despicable. And I think it's important that we encourage people, if you're going to come and protest, if you're going to come and make your voice heard here at the state Capitol, do so in a safe way, do it smartly without intimidation. We need to hear from the people. But unfortunately, there have been a couple bad actors that I believe cast a broad brush over all the protesters, where everyone thinks everyone was acting in a disorderly way. So we need to hear from the people, but we encourage people to do it in a safe way, responsibly. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that all the time here in our state and around the country.
Well, it's been pointed out that nobody can shoot the virus. So the presence of guns, first off, I'm curious as to what you think exactly those were supposed to mean or say, but I also want to know if you think people should be allowed to take a gun into the state capitol.
Well, obviously people have a constitutional right to keep and bear arms. It was important enough that the framers of our Constitution for our country put it in the Second Amendment. It's Article 1, Section 6 in our Michigan Constitution, the right to keep and bear arms. People have a right to do that. This is the people's house. It's the people's chamber. I don't want to say you have a constitutional right to assemble and a constitutional right to protest, and you have a constitutional right to keep and bear arms, but you don't have a constitutional right to do both at the same time. I think we have to be very careful about that. However, Devin, here in our Michigan Capitol today, we've had the same laws regarding firearms that we've always had. Right? We do allow concealed carry. Open carry is allowed.
Well, you know that some of your colleagues were feeling very intimidated and threatened by what they saw around them.
I think some of the behavior of those that were carrying firearms was out of line. I will be very honest with you about that. There should never be any sense of intimidation when you're carrying a firearm, but we just need to be careful, even in a pandemic, before we say we're just going to simply take away everyone's rights to have guns here in the Capitol. People need to be safe. People need to exercise their constitutional rights responsibly. That's what I'm calling on people to do. And as Speaker, I want to do everything I can to ensure people here in the chamber are kept safe. I applaud the Michigan State Police. I applaud our House sergeants and the Senate sergeants who did an incredible job at doing the absolute best that they could to their ability to maintain order. And I think, the protests, they're legal. People can do it. I just encourage people to be responsible when they come to Michigan's Capitol.
You would fight then any efforts, though, to change the ability to carry guns to the Capitol?
Constitutional rights are very important to me, Devin. And I think it's important that we honor those and respect those because the people give us our Constitution. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution, even whether I agree with it or not, as it pertains to many areas. And we just have to be careful. There's been a lot of talk, Devin, about who's essential, what's essential. Yeah. You know what? Today, the Constitution is still essential. And I think we can prioritize public health and take COVID-19 very seriously, yet be more reasonable in our approach. That's what we're asking of the governor. Let's take it seriously, but let's also look to restore livelihoods when it can be done safely and protect people's freedoms. We can find that balance, Devin. If we work together, we can find that balance.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for your time this morning. We will await what happens with the opening oral arguments on your lawsuit coming up this week. Thank you very much for the time this morning, and stay safe.
Thank you, Devin. Appreciate it.
You bet. Back with more in just a minute. We'll talk about fiscal health versus physical health. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.